Hello guys, welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking about Jack Hughes and which NHL team needs him the most. Now, Jack Hughes right now is looking like an elite prospect in the 2019 NHL draft, and with him being the best center in the draft, which NHL team needs him the most? Watch till the end to find out. Now, the 17-year-old American-born stud, Jack Hughes, is looking to be a serious contender for the #1 overall pick in this upcoming 2019 NHL draft. He's had a great season so far in the USDP and in the USHL, putting up a ton of points. And the USDP he's played 41 games, getting 23 goals, 63 assists for 86 points. And the USHL, he's played 24 games, getting 12 goals, 36 assists for 48 points. And you get the gist. The kid is pretty good. And Jack Hughes is a dynamic center who has a ton of offensive potential. He uses his puck skills and his creativity to create scoring chances, uses his amazing shot, and uses his fantastic skating to be one of the best players we've seen in this draft. And he is a guy that doesn't have a lot of size, but will likely be a top center in the future. And for a lot of teams, that is something that could desperately use. He could transition to a wing if a team needs that, but he will likely be the center of the future for the team that ends up picking him first or second overall. Now, I've compiled 13 different NHL teams that I think need Jack Hughes the most. I've separated them into 3 different categories, Tier 3 being really want, Tier 2 being badly want, and Tier 1 being need Jack Hughes. Now, I have 3 different NHL teams that are in Tier 3, the really want category. I'm first going to start out with the Colorado Avalanche. They're a team that I think could really want Jack Hughes, maybe not need him, but could definitely use him in their lineup. Now, Colorado right now has a very good chance to be able to draft Jack Hughes. They have the Ottawa Senators' first-round pick, and the Ottawa Senators are in last place right now, and I think clinched last place. So Colorado will have a very solid chance, especially at the lottery, to be able to draft Jack Hughes, but it might not be the greatest fit. They have Nathan MacKinnon, obviously, as the first-line center. He is the guy of the future. He is the guy of the now. He is the guy for the next decade and a half. I don't really see that changing. And when it comes to Jack Hughes, if he were to go to the Colorado Avalanche, I'm not sure how much ice time he would really get. He would for sure be the second-line center, maybe right out of the gates, but I just don't see him getting the sustained ice time, and maybe the ice time that he deserves long-term. Now, the next team in Tier 3, the last team in the really want tier, this one might be a little bit of a hot take to some people. Some people might have them as the need Jack Hughes category, but to me personally, I have the Vancouver Canucks in the really want category. I think Jack Hughes would be a solid fit for the Vancouver Canucks. It would be an amazing story to see him go with the Vancouver Canucks and go with his brother in Quinn Hughes, but I'm not sure if the direct fit is there, especially if he doesn't want to transition into a right winger. When it comes to the top 3 Vancouver Canucks centers, you got Bo Horvat there, obviously. You got Elias Pettersson, and then you have Adam Gaudette. That's a pretty solid top 3 center core. I think that center core could potentially win a Stanley Cup down the line if they are surrounded by great pieces. And I feel like that is fine to stay with. But if the Jack Hughes goes to that Vancouver Canucks team and he doesn't want to transition into a right winger, I feel like you might have some problems there because Bo Horvat is already that guy as the first line center there. He is almost the Selke caliber guy. You got Elias Pettersson, who I think wants to be the first-line center in Vancouver in the future. And when it comes to Jack Hughes, again, if he doesn't want to be that winger for Vancouver, there could be some problems, especially with ice time. I mean, that's a good problem to have, but one that Vancouver will have to deal with eventually. Now, moving on to Tier 2, the teams that badly want Jack Hughes. And for the first team in this category, I would have the New York Rangers. I was kind of contemplating putting them in the really want category, putting them obviously in the badly want category. That's what they are right now. But when it comes to the New York Rangers, even if they don't get Jack Hughes, their center core is pretty solid. Now, when it comes to the New York Rangers center core, I think it's pretty great. So now you have Mika Zibanejad as the #1 center, who I'm a big fan of. Big fan of Mika Zibanejad. Then in the #2 center position, you have Philip Chychyl, who has had a great season so far. Then you have Brett Howden as the #3 center, who has had a pretty good rookie campaign. And then at the #4 center, you have Elias Anderson, who is still finding himself in the NHL right now. But that's a pretty great top 4 center core, especially when it comes to the youth that they bring and the skill they bring. Even if they don't get Jack Hughes, I think that center core is pretty good. Obviously, you'd like to have Jack Hughes, and he would like to be the #1 center ahead of Mika Zibanejad, which would create an even more nasty center core. But I feel like with that, they don't absolutely need him. I feel like they need more of a guy like Kaapo Kakko, who can bring more scoring on the wing, rather than Jack Hughes, but they could definitely use both, especially for the future that they have right now. Now, the next team that I think really or badly wants Jack Hughes, I have the Chicago Blackhawks. They're a team that is very interesting. Now, they were just eliminated from the playoffs, I think, yesterday as I'm recording this. So they're going in the more youthful direction. They don't have the best team on paper right now. They could definitely use a great talent and a superstar talent like Jack Hughes. And I feel like that #1 spot in Chicago might be a lot more wide open than people might think. Now, when it comes to the Chicago Blackhawks center core, obviously they have Jonathan Toews as the #1 guy there. He's had a rebounding season. Then you have Dylan Strome as the second-line center, who has had a great season with the Chicago Blackhawks since being traded from the Arizona Coyotes. Then at the #3 position, they had Artem Anisimov, and at #4, you got Marcus Kruger. When it comes to Jonathan Toews, yes, he did have a great season offensively. He is 30 years old, so the prime for him is starting to escape. He is starting to get a lot older. He'll start to feel that probably in the next couple of years when he turns 31 and 32. But when it comes to the Chicago Blackhawks, I feel like that #1 center position, especially in the future, will be pretty wide open. Dylan Strome, again, having a great season, but I'm not sure if he's the #1 guy for the future, at least consistently. But Jack Hughes very well might be that. Now, the next team in Tier 2, the next team that I think really wants Jack Hughes is the Buffalo Sabres. They're playing like they want Jack Hughes right now, that's for sure. While they already got the great American-born guy, Jack Eichel, right there as the #1 guy. He's had a brilliant season, but Jack Hughes could likely be the second-line center and create just a beautiful duo as two elite American centers. Now, when it comes to the Buffalo Sabres center core, they have Jack Eichel as the #1 guy, Casey Mittelstadt as the second-line center, Evan Rodrigues as the third-line center, and Johan Larsson as the fourth-line center. Obviously, right now, they have some depth issues. They've been playing like it. I think they're like losers 8 straight or something. They're the 4th worst team in the league, and it's been a pretty terrible year for Buffalo after being #1 in the month of November. So, it's a pretty despair year for Buffalo, but Jack Hughes would solve a lot of problems. It's kind of the same thing with Jack Eichel. Jack Hughes, having his first name as Jack, being American-born, and likely being the #1 or #2 pick in the draft. There's a lot of similarities between both Jack Hughes and Jack Eichel, but I feel like both guys will be top centers in the league in a couple of years, and Jack Eichel already being that, I feel. But when it comes to the second-line center, it's kind of wide open, and Jack Hughes could fill that need. Now, the next team that I think badly wants Jack Hughes is the New Jersey Devils, and they're a very interesting team. Of course, they've had a bad season after making the playoffs last year. It's been a down year, but when it comes to how Jack Hughes would fit on that team, it's pretty interesting. Obviously, you've got Nico Hischier, the #1 pick in 2017. He's a great player, a defensive stud. Jack Hughes would likely be the #1 center in the future. Maybe you have Jack Hughes fit in as a right winger. You have maybe Taylor Hall, Nico Hischier, and Jack Hughes in the same line. That will be absolutely nasty, but New Jersey needs it nonetheless. And with the New Jersey Devils, they kind of need everything right now, especially when Taylor Hall is injured. They really don't have too many strengths whatsoever. When it comes to offense, defense, goaltending, they kind of struggle in everything, and we've seen that so far this season. So, while Jack Hughes might not be the perfect fit, they need him quite a bit to fulfill the rebuild that is still continuing, even though they made the playoffs last year. Now, the next team that is in Tier 2, the next team that I think badly wants Jack Hughes, is the Detroit Red Wings. Now, they're a very interesting team. Again, they could definitely use Jack Hughes. There might not be a perfect fit there, but I think he would play quite well and would have a great career there. The #1 position, you have Dylan Larkin. He's had a great season, being almost a point per game, showing why he is the first-line center in Detroit. Then at the #2 center, you have Andreas Athanasiou, having a very good season as well. You have at #3 center, you have Christopher Ain, and then as a #4 center, you have Dominic Turgeon. So they have some depth issues, obviously, but Jack Hughes would bring a big presence, especially offensively, that they do need right now. Now, my biggest concern with them is that they don't need that first-line center. I think right now, Dylan Larkin is that guy, and will be that guy for the future. He still is pretty young, and he's bringing that right now, which is the main reason why I don't think they need Jack Hughes. I think they need Kaapo Kakko a lot more. He would fit into that right wing quite well, and will be the #1 guy for years to come. But if Jack Hughes were to go to that right wing position and become winger, I think it would make a lot more sense than having him as the likely second-line center for a couple of years. But Detroit is kind of in the same position as the New Jersey Devils, where they kind of need everything defensively, offensively. They have some decent goaltending in Jimmy Howard, but who knows how long that will last. But especially offensively, they can use another superstar on that team. When it comes to Jack Hughes, he will likely be that guy. And while Philip Zadina is also developing and turning into the superstar that I think he can be, Jack Hughes will come into that team and play well. And Detroit has a solid chance at getting him. I think they've won 6 straight. They're playing pretty well right now, so they're kind of ruining their tank in a way. But I still feel like Jack Hughes would be a very solid fit on that team and would create a lot of offense that they need right now and likely in the future. Now, the last team that I have in Tier 2, the last team that I think badly wants Jack Hughes, is the Arizona Coyotes. Now, they are an interesting team right now. They're 1 point out of getting eliminated from the NHL playoff race, so they're kind of on the brink right now, which means that Arizona likely won't get the greatest pick. But when it comes to the Arizona Coyotes, I feel like Jack Hughes would be a very solid fit on that team, and would likely be the first-line center, and would easily get that for years to come. Now, when it comes to their center depth, it's actually quite good, especially when it comes to them being healthy. Now, there's no superstars in the center group, but there are a lot of solid players. Guys like Derek Stepan, Nick Schmaltz, Christian Dvorak, Brad Richardson, Nick Cousins. It's not a bad center group, and when it comes to them being healthy, it's pretty solid. But they don't have that bona fide superstar, especially when it comes to the forward group. Clayton Keller is definitely the most closest to that, but he's kind of had a little bit of a regression this season. When it comes to Jack Hughes, if he were to go to the Arizona Coyotes, he would be the #1 guy there eventually if they do actually develop him right. Now, moving on to Tier 1, the teams that need Jack Hughes, and I'm going to get it out of the way first. I'm going to say the Ottawa Senators obviously do need Jack Hughes, but since, of course, the first round pick they traded is with the Colorado Avalanche, they can't get him. So, obviously, the Ottawa Senators need him the most. That is the obvious answer. That's the same thing with Capo Caco, the video I made a few days ago. Obviously, the Senators need him, but obviously, they will not get him. Now, on to the next team in Tier 1, the next team that needs Jack Hughes, a team that I can actually get him and actually pick him somehow. I have the LA Kings. Now, they are a very interesting team, having a very bad season, but a guy like Jack Hughes would help a ton with their franchise. Same thing going with Capo Caco. Now, the LA Kings aren't exactly deprived for centers, but in the future, they will be. Now, when it comes to their center depth, they have obviously Anze Kopitar as the first-line center. They have Adrian Kempe as the second-line center, Jeff Carter as the third-line center, and Mike Amadio as the fourth-line center. I'm pretty sure I pronounced that right. But when it comes to Anze Kopitar, he'll likely be staying. If Jack Hughes does go there, I do see him being the first-line center maybe a couple years as Kopitar starts to decline. Adrian Kempe, I'm a pretty big fan of, had a pretty rough season so far, but I still think he's a pretty solid young player. You have Jeff Carter there, who will likely get shipped off in the offseason if LA can actually trade him, and then Amadio is just a depth guy. But when it comes to Jack Hughes, I feel like he has a bigger opportunity to get that first-line center than some people might believe. Again, Anze Kopitar is a fantastic player, but I'm not sure if he'll be able to keep that first-line status for too much longer. He had that great rejuvenating season last year, but this season has been pretty rough for him and the rest of the LA Kings. But Jack Hughes going onto that team would do wonders for especially their offensive needs. Now, moving on to the next team that I think needs Jack Hughes, I have the Anaheim Ducks. And they're a very interesting team where they got some good, solid young players and prospects, but adding a guy like Jack Hughes would do so much for a franchise that needs a guy like that. When it comes to the Anaheim Ducks pool of centers, they have Sam Steele as the #1 guy, they have Adam Henrique as the #2 center, they got Devin Shore as the #3 center, and Derek Grant as the #4 center. Now, that's not bad, but it's not great either. I think Sam Steele will be a very, very good second-line center for the future in Anaheim, but I feel like a guy like Jack Hughes will be the bona fide #1 for years to come. While guys like Ryan Getzlaf are on that team, they still have some of the old guard that are starting to retire or starting to get older, and a guy like Jack Hughes would do a lot for them. They haven't really had a superstar to his caliber since a guy like Corey Perry back when he was in his prime scoring goals left and right. But a guy like Jack Hughes would do a ton for a franchise that needed the offense this season, especially. They needed some of the speed that Jack Hughes will provide, and especially in the future when other guys start to retire, Jack Hughes will become the guy in Anaheim if he is drafted there. And this was the first year that Anaheim missed the playoffs in quite a long time. So they're in that middle of the retool and rebuilding phase, and a phase that, if they do get Jack Hughes, would instantly accelerate. While they still have some bad contracts on that team, I feel like Jack Hughes coming in and playing alongside of guys like Ricard Raquel, Jakob Silfverberg would be amazing for his career, and I feel like he would have a very solid campaign there in Anaheim. He would get some attention, not the most, but still be an excellent player and a superstar in his own right. Now, on to the final team, the team that I think needs Jack Hughes the most. You might see them from something where I'm wearing. I wonder. Yeah, you might have guessed it by now. The team that I think needs Jack Hughes the most, it might be a little bit of a hot take, but I think it's the Minnesota Wild. Now, let me explain for a second. Let's look at their center core for the Minnesota Wild. Obviously, you got Eric Stahl right there. You got Joel Eriksson-Ek. You got Victor Rask. You got Nico Sturm, who just came in as a free agent. And you got Eric Fehr. That's not good. at all. And especially when Eric Stahl maybe starts to decline a lot more heavily, starts to maybe retire in the next couple of years, that core of centers will get even worse. And when looking at Minnesota's prospect pool, they have a lot more wingers in the prospect pool, a lot more defensemen in the prospect pool than centers. They don't really have that top guy that I think will be a top 6 forward when it comes to centers in their prospect pool. And that's a big problem for the Minnesota Wild to have, especially when they don't have that much coming up either. This is the first year for Minnesota they've missed in a long time, since like 2012, so we don't really expect their prospect pool to be too good. But the center depth, especially in the prospect pool, is not all that great. And Jack Hughes filling the hole that they have at center would work exceptionally well. He would be the star again that they haven't had in their whole franchise history. And while there's teams like LA and Anaheim that have less points, who are kind of worse off, they do have centers like Anze Kopitar in LA. With Anaheim, they got Sam Steele and Lundestrom coming up. With Minnesota, they don't really have anything. When it comes to the on-ice team right now, they don't have too much. When it comes to the prospect pool, they don't really have too much to go from. But a guy like Jack Hughes coming on that team in year 1 would do so much for a franchise that needs that star power and has needed it for a long, long time. But of course, with this video, I want to hear your guys' thoughts down in the comments down below. So let me know, what do you think about Jack Hughes as a prospect? What do you think about what he brings to a team? And of course, the big question, which team do you think needs Jack Hughes the most? But if you guys want some more Grav videos just like this one, you can click on this card right here to watch my video about Capo Caco and which NHL team needs him the most. But that'll be it for today, guys. If you guys did enjoy, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you haven't already. Again, comment down below your thoughts on Jack Hughes and which NHL team needs him the most. And I'll see you guys next video or stream. Goodbye.